Hello, I'm Dr. Shelley, and I want to welcome you to this presentation, Why Are Developmental Interventions Essential for All Children with ASD? And what is your key role? Well, before I begin, I'd like to tell you something about myself. While I was a pre-K through 12 educator and a university-level teacher trainer, I was pursuing my doctorate in health psychology. That's when our second child was born 2 months premature. He was not supposed to survive. And a year later, he was diagnosed with severe autism, severe mental retardation, which was the term they used at the time. We were told he would never form words and he would never know us again. Well, I wanted to reach him. I wanted him to know that he was loved. So to reach him, I was fortunate to train with professionals across the U.S., both about my own child's needs and also about the needs that other children with ASD present. We developed a home program for our child, who was completely declassified from autism by Dr. Stanley Greenspan at the age of 8. Well, the professionals who had joined our child's intervention team invited me then to work with the parents and their children with ASD who came to their practices as their parent educator. I worked as a consultant in this capacity for 10 years, at which point I had developed my ACERS model of autism intervention. ACERS, A for autism, C for collaboration, E, education, R, research, and S, the big one, support. I changed my professional practice to be completely virtual at that point. And I also realized that too many books written for parents by MDs informed families that autism was irreversible and incurable. Well, that hadn't been my experience for those 10 years. My own child and all the other children I've worked with, certainly you couldn't describe them that way. So over the next 12 years, while continuing to work with families, I became a doctor of educational leadership and change in autism optimal outcomes, and a researcher. And I have now been helping parents to lessen their stress, maintain a loving, non-judgmental mindset, and to understand how to resolve their individual child's needs for over 30 years, across the U.S. and worldwide. And I've also been a member of Epidemic Answers Professional Advisory Board for decades. Now, while a few years ago I founded the nonprofit Parents as Partners, you can still go to the site and you can learn more about my child's journey out of autism. And there's an entire module for you to download podcasts and a self-directed course to help you lessen stress and develop the mindset that supports your child's best outcomes. Today, I am once again consulting privately with parents of children with autism or autism-like diagnoses virtually, no matter where they are. So you've come to Epidemic Answers for a variety of reasons. Perhaps after your diagnosis, you may have come to Epidemic Answers to determine what biomedical, environmental, nutritional, dietary interventions may be helpful to your individual child, among the many possibilities that our website offers you. After determining your child's total load is all that is impacting your child's resilience and ability to develop and progress. Each of these interventions that are appropriate for your child will build their resilience and improve your child's quality of life. Each element of your child's total load has contributed to the profile of your child's unique developmental issues. Your child with ASD will become more available to you as he becomes more resilient. But there's a big but. There's a missing piece. And that is that autism spectrum disorders, is a neurodevelopmental issue. your child's developmental age will probably be much younger than their same age peers. This is because your child's ASD got in the way of your child's development. Perhaps not physical development, height, weight, your child stood and walked at appropriate times, but most important, autism prevents your child from developing socially and emotionally at the very earliest stages of life. These are the foundation for future learning. Let me say that again. Social and emotional development is the foundation for all future learning. Your child's ASD diagnosis is based on their social emotional development. We know that much of this was caused by your child's total load of underlying issues. Your child's total load prevented them from the typical social emotional developmental milestones that evolve naturally in neurotypical children. Contrary to what you may have heard, the main issues of ASD are not behavioral. These are just the outward signs of your child's underlying issues. Let me give you an example. You may have seen something like this. When we look at an iceberg, we see the portion of it that's above water. We can observe only that part of the iceberg, similar to the observable behaviors that the person who is diagnosing your child uses as a reference to make that diagnosis. But in reality, we know that the part we can't observe, the great big, bigger part of the iceberg, it doesn't even fit on this slide. This is where all of those underlying issues that cause what we see when we look at a child with autism and causes that small amount of the iceberg that we see. But we know that that really large piece that explains autism for each child is different and may be due to some of these possible causes. The ability to self-regulate doesn't work. Environmental factors have impacted. Perhaps diet and nutrition. The child may have sensory processing dysfunction. Epigenetics, which means how does the environment impact on the child's genetics? This is only a small number of the things that might be at issue. In my child's case, it was prematurity. Let me show you, when we look at the larger part of the iceberg, or the underlying conditions that have caused your child's autism, the reason why your child has not developed socially and emotionally. You may want to focus on interventions for speech or visual and auditory processing and many others as your child progresses, as your child becomes more resilient. And all of these must be approached developmentally. But let's take a look at the developmental intervention that must be addressed before all of these. Sensory integration. This is the sensory integration model, a developmental model, developed by Dr. Jean Ayres in the 70s. And Dr. Ayres realized that when you put together a developmental intervention, you can't quite start at the top. Imagine if the pharaohs had started building their pyramids by suspending this little tiny point in the middle of the air. Would the pyramids have survived 5,000 years? Probably not. To build something that's going to last and last, you've got to have a foundation. And here is our central nervous system, and the foundation is the 7 senses. In fact, today we talk about 8. But if you look at these blocks, each of these blocks is wider and taller, much stronger than the ones above it. And that's because these 7 senses, which for neurotypical children work appropriately beginning at birth, for our children, We may have to help some or all of them to work individually, and then we want to help them work together as an integrated whole so that the child is able to developmentally move up the pyramid. And let's take a look. If the senses are working within the range of typical for the child's age, the child will start to be able to screen input out. The child will be aware of both sides of the body. These are important things. Postural security. These are important things for the child to be able to continue developing and learning. And then when the sensory motor development is working, we get to the perceptual motor development. And here's where the auditory language skills, the ability to receive language and to express language comes in. This is where the attention center functions come in. But if all of the blocks below these centers are not working in developmentally appropriate ways, then it's very difficult for the child to start speaking to you, and very difficult for the child to give you attention. And then let's take one more look. When we have the perceptual motor working well, then this child is really, really ready to learn. The child can do activities of daily living, the child can behave appropriately, and the child is ready for academic learning. Now, I know that there are many interventions that begin with academic learning and behavior. But if that child, and they sit a child in a seat for 6-8 hours a day, but if that child doesn't have the foundation, then whatever it might look like it's been accomplished here is really just rote. It's not something the child can really make use of among peers and in the world. Now here's another developmental model. This is Dr. Stanley Greenspan's learning tree. And if we look at the bottom, the roots, where everything comes from, the foundation, let's say, these are the elements that a child needs to be working developmentally appropriately for that child to be well regulated, meaning the child is able to stay calm, be organized, and be alert, give you their attention. And some of these are emotional modulation and sensory modulation and visual and auditory processing. When these are working appropriately, which means you have a 2-year-old and that child is regulated to a 2-year-old level, right? Unfortunately, what we generally see is we might see 6-year-olds who barely have the regulation of a 2-year-old level when we think about the spectrum. When all of these are regulated, then Dr. Greenspan describes the 6 functional emotional milestones. What is necessary for a child 0 through, let's say, 6 years old to be ready to have academic skills and wonderful capacities and executive function to go out into the world and be the best they can be. Let me tell you a bit about these developmental milestones. And remember, the developmental milestones are what Dr. Greenspan talked about as the trunk of the learning tree. So the first is attention. And in neurotypical children, this develops in the first days of life. The baby can show calm interest and purposeful responses to sights and sounds and touch and movement and other sensory experiences. But I'm guessing for most of you who are listening to this presentation that attention isn't easy for your child. And the next level, once attention is established, is engagement. Engaging with the world, which develops typically between 2 and 5 months. Now, that's not to say that our children, because they didn't develop them at that time, can't. Of course not. It just means that this is what children need to develop in order to be academically ready, ready to make friends, ready to get out into the world. So, when a child is engaging with the world, we see growing expressions of intimacy and relatedness, very especially with you, your child's parents. Now, these 2 levels are also completely important for the first 2 levels for any kind of interaction, any kind of communication. even if we're not using words. Mommies of typical babies know that they can just use silly words with their baby, and their baby will respond from about 2 months on easily. Number 3 is interaction and communication, which develops between 4 and 10 months. This is a range of back and forth interactions with emotional expressions and sounds and hand gestures and the like to convey intentions. And I'm sure most of you have had this kind of back and forth, even with completely nonverbal infants. We do something silly, they laugh, so it causes us to do something else silly, and then eventually over time we start using words, they start using sounds and words, but the gestures are so important. Don't want to skip the gestures. Milestone 4 is shared problem solving, and that develops between 10 and 18 months. And many social and emotional interactions are used for problem solving. When you have an 18-month-old and you want to go out into the snow, you could put the child's jacket on, but you could give them the opportunity of problem solving by saying, well, it's cold outside. I wonder what we need. That's an opportunity for problem solving on the child's part. Level 5, meaningful use of ideas. And this typically develops between 18 months and 3 years. This is the pretend play time. The child has the ability to use meaningful words or phrases and interactive pretend play with caregivers or peers. And then finally, level 6, we refer to as logical thinking, which develops between 3 and 4.5 years old. And logical connections between meaningful ideas is kind of means 5 o'clock is not a good time for ice cream because you won't be able to eat dinner. So the why, 5 o'clock is not a good time because you won't be able to eat dinner. So it's logical, it's a connection between 2 logical ideas. So let's go back now to the learning tree. When the child has achieved the shared attention, the engagement, all the way up to answering why questions and because answers, logical ideas, that child is about 4.5, 5 years old, and that child is ready for kindergarten. And that child can then develop academic skills and also the great capacities that we don't call academic skills. They are the social emotional skills that give our children the opportunity to express who they are in so many ways, through curiosity, internal discipline, moral integrity, creativity, feeling of self-esteem, having an emotional range. So if our children have not yet reached the logical thinking stage, they're really not ready to take in all this learning. But when they reach the social emotional stage, level 6 of logical thinking, they are so ready to take in anything we want to teach them. The foundation of all learning is social emotional development. A child regulated, moving up that tree trunk through the 6 developmental milestones of Dr. Greenspan's. Children develop socially and emotionally through joyous interactions with people they trust and with whom they feel safe. And the best people for that is the parents. Social emotional development evolves from the relational, joyous interactions your child has with you, whether a newborn or whether you're going to start this afternoon. You are your child's first teacher. Your warm, loving relationship with your child is central to the progress of development. You are the best person to support your child's developmental progress. There is no therapist out there who's better than you are. You are the expert about your child. And through child-led play with you, your child develops in all areas of social and emotional development. And here's the important thing. It doesn't matter what you play or what you play with. just as long as your child seems motivated by it and it's joyous and fun. It doesn't have to be according to the instructions on the box. And you can see this daddy and his son are playing with, I don't know, could be tops of jars. I have no idea. But this is something that's really interesting to this child, and daddy is engaging with it joyously and making a game out of it. So how do you begin this relational play? Well, the most important thing is your mindset. That you are loving, accepting of your child in this moment. You're not worried about what you've been told in the past. You're not worried about what might happen later today or 10 years from now. You just accept who your child is in any given moment, completely without judgment and with no expectations. And hopefully you can do this in a sensory calm space, a room that you can kind of keep free from clutter, or you can just straighten it up before you begin playing with your child. And there's a wonderful book by Ron Kaufman from 2014 called Autism Breakthrough. And he explains the importance of this sensory calm room in that wonderful book. But what I'd like to suggest is that you start out by thinking of 3 of your child's favorite things, 3 things your child loves. And then think of 3 things you can do with each one. That's all you have to do. 3 favorite objects. What do I do if the child shows interest in any of the 3? What are 3 things I could do? In fact, let me tell you what happened the first time I did exactly this. So I walked into the sensory calm room and I put down the 3 most favorite objects of my child. And of course, his most favorite object of all was his ratty, stringy, overloved green sweater. I mean, you wouldn't know it was a sweater anymore. And as soon as he entered the room, he saw the green sweater, he sat down on the floor, and he just got himself involved in it. So I walked in and realized he was kind of quiet. So I didn't come bounding in the room in that moment. I might have if he'd been running around the room or jumping, but he was being very quiet and loving his sweater. So I just sat down on the floor next to him so that I was pretty much on his eye level. And when he put the sweater down, I gently lifted it up, making sure that he could see what I was doing. And I took the sweater and I put it in front of my face. And guess what? He looked at me. For the first time, he looked at me. Now, I think he was looking at the sweater, but he showed interest. And then I gave him back the sweater. And he kind of held it a little more, and we put it down. I again gently picked it up, now laughing with a little chuckle. Like I was kind of slightly stealing it. And I put it on my head. And at that point, he stood up, looked me straight in the eye, and with a grin on his face, reached out, gestured, and took the sweater off my head. Well, I had one more idea, right? I didn't need to have ideas. It was a matter of what can I do with the sweater? Well, the next thing I know, he's handing me the sweater with a grin on his face, and he's looking straight at me. So I take the sweater, and with great joy, I shoved it into my t-shirt. Now he's got to find the sweater. Now he's got to do it. So he's attending to what I'm doing. He's engaged with me, and now he has to problem solve to find it. And we have a lot of laughter around that. And the game evolved to the point in the same first try, where this little boy who was supposed to never know me and was always just seeming as if he was in his own world, was running around the room with me. I would hide the sweater, he would find it, then he would hide the sweater, and I would find it. And we have referred to that as the sweater game, literally, when we started to have joyous interactions together. So how do you begin? First, you observe your child and ask yourself these 3 questions. Start by seeing whether your child is calm and regulated. Just ask yourself, is my child calm? Is my child kind of organized, looking like he's ready to play? Next, what is your child's energy level in this moment? Remember, my child was very quiet in that moment, and it sure picked up very quickly. And look at how your child is playing with the objects that you put in the room. It's giving you clues regarding how you can enter what they're interested in doing. And then the third question, what developmental milestone is your child showing you? This is where you can start playing with your child. But remember, this is child-led play. So follow your child's lead. In my case, my child was playing with his sweater, so I just followed along. Your child is the director. You are simply the assistant. You don't have an agenda. Whatever he wants to play with, you just find one other thing to do with it. So engage with your child at their current developmental level, and by sitting at their eye level, just like this dad is doing. Match your child's tone and play at the milestone you observe. So in my child's case, he wasn't engaged, he wasn't attending, so I had to start there. Then start to play joyfully with excitement and enthusiasm. Get a back and forth game going, kind of like a ping pong game. Child does something, you do something, and then you wait for your child to do something else. And sometimes you'll only get one exchange. And sometimes you'll get 3 exchanges. And sometimes, like I found, it just went on and on because there were so many funny things we could do with the sweater. But I had no idea. Use both verbal and nonverbal language. Use gestures, which are so important. We don't want to skip the gestural communication for our children. Change your tone of voice. Use sound effects. Children love sound effects, and that brings their attention back to you. Use mouth games, all kinds of things with your tongue and little raspberries, whatever you need to do. Whatever it is, be silly, because young children, and that's what we're talking about, a child with a developmental level that's quite young, are really, really engageable when you are silly. They love it when you're silly. Play joyfully. Become your child's favorite toy. Yeah, sweater was fun, right? He loved sweater. But when he played with sweater with me, that's when he had the most fun. So I was the most important toy in the room, and that's who you are. But remember, this is not a time to teach. Although I will tell you, your child will be developing and learning even as you play. But some of you might say, but my child isn't interested in playing with me. This tells us that your child is not ready to offer you those first milestones. And those first milestones, attention and engagement, are necessary for all interactions, for all play. So you must have attention and engagement before the child can offer you any more involved play. And what if your child is doing a repetitive behavior? Well, this is how children with ASD take care of themselves. This is the way that they deal with stress and anxiety. Now back to Ron Kaufman's book, which is based on the Sunrise program. He suggests that you join your child, that this is the most loving thing you can do. If your child is sitting there and flapping away, sit down next to him or in front of him and flap. That child is doing what he has to do to take care of himself. It means that your child isn't calm and regulated. He's trying really hard. Some children run in circles. There are so many things that children do to try to regulate themselves. But it also means that they're not alert for new experiences, developmental growth, and learning. And so that means your child's doing, in those moments of repetitive behavior, all their nervous system seems to need so that they can be ready to attend. They want to attend, no question about it. But there is something in their, perhaps in their sensory systems or their autonomic nervous systems that needs attention first. The child must be regulated to be able to attend to you and to engage in joyous relational play. Again, remember the roots of the tree. Regulation is first. And that's what your child is doing, but obviously not that successfully. You may see signs that your child is unregulated. Your child may be having a tantrum. Your child may be having a meltdown. Maybe your child runs out of the room or runs out of the house. Very dangerous, and we refer to that as eloping. Your child is experiencing out-of-control emotions. Or, like mine, your child seemed shut down and seems to have no interest in what is going on around them. But in reality, this is because they cannot control their environment. Their senses are not working appropriately. They are not having a tantrum or a meltdown after sitting there going, I think I'm going to bother my mom and really upset her. Let me have a meltdown. It's not possible. It's your child in complete overwhelm. They cannot take the world in. For some children, it's painful, and they can't tell you. So we want to help them. So the foundation of social emotional development is regulation. We talked about this. This is the trunk of the learning tree. Regulation is at the root of a child's ability to achieve what we want so much, those developmental milestones, so that they can go on and learn to their full capacity. However, children with ASD experience anxiety and stress throughout each day as they attempt to navigate a world that is difficult to take in through their senses. Even if they are pre-verbal, children with ASD take in your stress and your anxiety. They may not know why you're stressed or why you're anxious, but they can tell from your tone of voice, they can tell from what's happening on your face. Believe me, even though they may not be looking at you, they're very aware of you. And when you're stressed and anxious, they take it in, and on some level think that they've caused it, that it's their fault, which just overwhelms them even more. In fact, Dr. Serena Wieder, who collaborated with Dr. Greenspan, said there's always a reason. The behaviors that we observe let us know that our children's system is out of regulation. We have to be comfortable detectives to observe those behaviors and recognize, he's not calm, he's not regulated. And the other thing to know is that these are involuntary reactions. No child is sitting there going, I think flapping would be a really fun thing to do right now. Absolutely not. As explained by Dr. Mona Delahook in her 2019 book, Beyond Behaviors, and also in her recent 2022 book, Brain Body Parenting, dysregulation is caused, number one, by the child's autonomic nervous system, which is the system that senses if the child feels safe. Now, nothing unsafe may be in your awareness, but the child's response is fight, flight, or freeze. Then number two, there may be issues of sensory integration or sensory processing. And the best book that I can recommend to you to learn more about this and what you can do is The Out of Sync Child, 3rd edition, again, 2022, by Carol Stock-Kranowitz. But the most important thing is that you be regulated so that you can help your child regulate. And although you may not realize it, you actually have in place what we refer to as the parent's sensory diet. And these ideas are based on Henry Otte Services for 2001. Ask yourself, what do you do throughout your day to ensure that you feel just right, ready to take on anything? Let me give you a few ideas. See what comes to your mind. So to help you wake up in the morning, what do you enjoy? Do you take a shower, go for a brisk walk, drink a couple of cups of coffee or tea? That's good. When you prepare for bed, to calm yourself, do you eat a snack, turn the lights down, listen to music or watch TV? Do you snuggle under a blanket, or do you read a book that'll lull you to sleep? Now, when you're upset and frustrated, what helps you? Do you go to the gym? Do you take a long walk? Do you sit outside? Do you listen to music? Do you go to your room and lock the door? Do you take a bath? Do you curl up and read? Do you call a friend if you're upset? Do you take a bunch of really deep breaths? Which of these do you use without even realizing it, that that's your sensory diet? And what's the environment that helps you to read or study? Do you like to be sitting at a table or a desk? Do you like to be sprawled out on a couch? Do you like to sit in a rocking chair? And think about it. What do you like about your home? Do you prefer cozy or open spaces? Do you like large windows? Do you like soft or firm furniture? Do you add scents of candles or potpourri to your house? These are all the things that you do for your individual sensory system. And what kind of environment helps you concentrate? Do you prefer quiet or loud music? Do you like food and certain drinks when you want to concentrate? Do you like the light to be bright, or do you like it to be dim? Do you like to be by yourself, or do you study better when you have others around you? And lastly, if you have to be at a meeting, whether it's a PTA or a business meeting, and you need to be attentive to what they're saying for an hour or so, do you usually doodle, play with small objects like paper clips or a rubber band? Do you chew on your pencils? Do you cross your legs and shake your foot? Is there something that you like to snack on? Crunch is what I need. Do you drink coffee or soda? All of these are ways that you self-regulate throughout your day to stay calm, organized, ready to hear, and alert even though the speaker might be droning on a bit. So, first thing you want to do if your child is having one of those moments where he's in overwhelm is check in with yourself to be sure that you are in a calm, regulated state. If not, what do you need to do? You know from your own sensory diet what you need to do to be able to approach your child calm and regulated. Because if you're upset, it's going to upset them more. And ask yourself, am I ready to love my child unconditionally? No matter what he does, he is my child. And remember, no one knows your child better than you do. And you can see from this picture, you want to be on your child's level. This is not a teaching moment. Toss that out. It's a calming moment. You want to speak to your child in a calm, regulated voice, sort of like, sweetheart, I see that you're upset, or I see that you're uncomfortable right now. Let's take a few deep breaths. Right? Now, your child may not understand any of those words, but he will get your tone and understand that you're at a much calmer level. Let's think about what would help your unique child to co-regulate. For instance, would your child's system benefit from a hug? And some children don't want to be hugged, so you know which is yours. Perhaps jumping into a pile of pillows or beanbags, or being squeezed under the couch cushion, or turning on soothing or favorite music, or perhaps going to a hideout space, a little dark corner that you've set up with favorite objects and soothing books, just to take a little time out. Or some children like to be bounced, or they like to blow into a whistle or a balloon. And one of the favorites I've seen is making Bubble Mountain, which is just a bowl with about an inch of water in it, a few drops of dish liquid, and by blowing in it and blowing in it, the child makes a huge mountain of bubbles, and the blowing is as helpful as taking a deep breath. And then, of course, they're sipping through a straw. Even sipping a thick liquid like a smoothie through a straw can be very, very calming. And You know best what calms your child. Now, a sensory diet is different for every unique child. And among numerous handouts that I'm going to make available to you, and I'll tell you in a couple of minutes, is this oral motor grocery list. And what it tells you is that some children benefit from things to suck or blow, like the mountain, things to munch or crunch, again, that's me, things to chew, like a big wad of gum, intense tastes or temperatures, not me, or non-food items. Then again, some children benefit from things to sniff, like lemon or lavender. Some children like really deep pressure, and others really gain from some time doing movement. So creating a sensory diet is different for every child, and you probably want to speak to your child's sensory integration trained occupational therapist. They will help you, but they'll collaborate with you because you know your child all day long to come up with a sensory diet to try, and sometimes things will be very helpful and sometimes things will either not be helpful or they'll be inconvenient. So you will use certain things in the car, certain things when you're out on a walk, certain things when you're sitting at your dinner table. You will discover what sensory diet items are best for your unique individual child's sensory profile. And no one, again, is better to co-regulate your child than you. This is your key role. In every moment when your child is calm and regulated and alert, your child is ready for joyous, relational play with you. Remember the green sweater story? We had definitely done some sensory diet before we walked into that calm room. Later on, we would do activities in the calm room so that he would stay calm and regulated. And when your child is calm and regulated and alert, he's ready to move through the developmental milestones just by your joyous play. And he's ready for age-appropriate academic readiness and to become a successful learner, which is, of course, our goal. Successful learner, enjoying play with peers where we'll learn in every environment. Now, I mentioned resources before. If you go to my website, drshelleystravitz.com, and use code EA for Epidemic Answers 22, you can download for free the references I mentioned. There will be a transcript of this presentation. You can get a copy of Dr. Greenspan's Learning Tree. You will get a URL of social emotional models, so you can look at a few different developmental models. You'll also get a copy of the developmental milestones that I've been talking about and these co-regulation ideas that I suggested during the presentation. And finally, you can download the oral motor grocery list. All of these will be available on my website for free for you just by using code EA22. And if you'd like to connect with me, again, you can go to drshelleystravitz.com and schedule a free 30 to 60 minute consultation. I'm happy to speak with you. And to contact me, you can do so at support@drshelleystravitz.com. And then I've also listed for you where I am on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and on Twitter. I look forward to your going ahead and putting these developmental ideas into practice. If you have any questions, please just send me an email. And I know that once you add developmental interventions and co-regulation to your child's life, you're going to start seeing incredible changes. So for now, I will just tell you what I say to every parent whenever I speak to them. Just have fun. Thank you for listening.